The thunder cracked overhead as Adelaide Stone gripped the reins tighter, her knuckles white against the leather as her horse stumbled forward through the relentless downpour. 3 weeks a widow and 2,000 miles from the life she'd known in Boston, she wondered if fleeing west had been a mistake that would cost her the only thing she had left her life. Adelaide pulled her sodden coat tighter around her shoulders, the garment offering little protection against the torrential spring storm that had caught her off guard in the Wyoming territory. Her horse, a sturdy mare she'd named Penny, huffed in exhaustion as they trudged along what remained visible of the muddy trail. Adelaide had planned to reach Kalisoga by nightfall, but the unexpected deluge had slowed their progress to a dangerous crawl. "Just a little further, girl," Adelaide murmured, though she had no idea if shelter lay ahead or if they would be forced to endure the elements through the night. Her thoughts drifted to Henry, her husband of 5 years, now buried in Boston soil. The consumption had taken him quickly, leaving Adelaide with mounting debts and her brother-in-law's unwanted advances. The advertisement seeking teachers in Wyoming had seemed like Providence a chance to start anew. A flash of lightning illuminated the landscape, and Adelaide caught sight of a structure in the distance. Hope surged within her as she urged Penny forward, squinting through the rain. As they drew closer, the outline of a modest ranch house took shape, a lantern glowing in one of the windows like a beacon in the stormy night. Adelaide guided Penny toward the property, relief and trepidation warring within her. She had little choice but to seek shelter, yet approaching a stranger's home after dark filled her with unease. As they neared the house, she could make out a large barn and corral, suggesting a working cattle ranch. She dismounted with difficulty, her limbs stiff with cold as she led Penny toward the house. Before she could reach the front steps, the door swung open and a tall figure emerged, rifle in hand. "Who's there?" a deep voice called out, barely audible above the storm. "Please," Adelaide called back, her voice trembling. "I'm a traveler caught in the storm. I seek shelter until morning." The figure stepped forward, revealing a broad-shouldered man in his early 30s. His face was partially obscured by several days' growth of beard, but his eyes were alert and wary as they assessed Adelaide and her horse. "Name's Russell Callahan," he said, lowering his rifle slightly. "Most folks around here just call me Russ." "Adelaide Stone," she replied, attempting a curtsy that nearly sent her sprawling in the mud. "I'm the new schoolteacher for Kalisoga. I was meant to arrive tomorrow, but the storm—" Russ nodded, his expression softening slightly as he noticed her shivering. "You're about 15 miles short of town, Mrs. Stone, and in no condition to travel further tonight." He hesitated only briefly before continuing, "Best come inside, I'll see to your horse." Adelaide nearly wept with relief. "Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Pa, who's out there?" A young voice called from the doorway, and Adelaide saw a boy of perhaps 10 years peering out from behind the door. "It's all right, Thomas. We've got a visitor who needs shelter from the storm," Russ explained, taking Penny's reins from Adelaide's trembling hands. "Show Mrs. Stone inside while I take her horse to the barn." The boy nodded solemnly, opening the door wider. "Yes, sir." He turned his serious gaze to Adelaide. "You can come in, madam. I've got the fire going good." As Adelaide stepped into the warm cabin, she was struck by its simplicity and the obvious absence of a woman's touch. A large fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, with rough-hewn furniture arranged around it. The cooking area was tidy but sparse, and she noticed a small table with 3 chairs, though one appeared rarely used. "Thank you, Thomas," she said, grateful to be out of the elements. "You're very kind." "Pa says hospitality's important out here," the boy replied, his manner remarkably adult for his age. "Says it can mean the difference between life and death sometimes." "Your father is wise," Adelaide replied, removing her soaked bonnet. "That's my sister, Sarah," Thomas said, pointing to a small figure Adelaide hadn't noticed, curled up asleep in a rocking chair near the fire. The child appeared to be about 5 years old, with dark blonde braids much like Thomas's hair color. Before Adelaide could respond, the door opened again and Russ entered, bringing with him a gust of cold air and the scent of rain. He removed his dripping hat and coat, hanging them by the door. "Your horse is settled in the barn," he informed Adelaide. "Fine animal. She'll be dry and fed by morning." "I'm most grateful, Mr. Callahan," Adelaide said. "I don't know what would have become of us had we not found your home." Russ nodded, then looked to his son. "Thomas, fetch some of your mother's old things for Mrs. Stone to change into. She's soaked through." Adelaide noticed the brief shadow that crossed the boy's face at the mention of his mother, but he nodded and disappeared through a door leading to the back of the house. "I don't wish to impose," Adelaide began, but Russ waved away her concern. "No imposition. Can't have Kalisoga's new schoolteacher dying of pneumonia before she even reaches town." There was no humor in his voice, only practical consideration. "Thomas, help your sister to bed, please," he called as the boy returned with a bundle of clothing. As Thomas gently roused his sister and led her toward the back, Russ turned to Adelaide. "You can change behind that screen there. I'll heat up some stew." Adelaide accepted the clothes with gratitude and moved behind the privacy screen in the corner of the room. As she peeled off her wet garments, she couldn't help but wonder about the absent Mrs. Callahan. Thomas's reaction suggested she was gone, not merely away. The borrowed dress was simple but well made, if a bit large on Adelaide's frame. She emerged from behind the screen to find Russ setting a bowl of steaming stew on the table. "It's not fancy," he said, "but it's hot." "It looks wonderful," Adelaide replied sincerely, seating herself at the table. The stew was hearty, with chunks of beef and vegetables, and she hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first spoonful touched her lips. Russ sat across from her, his own bowl untouched as he studied her. "What brings a woman to travel alone to Kalisoga?" "Most ladies come with husbands or family." Adelaide paused, then decided honesty was best. "I'm a widow, Mr. Callahan. My husband passed 3 weeks ago. There was nothing left for me in Boston." Russ's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. "I'm sorry for your loss." "As I am for yours," Adelaide replied softly. When Russ's eyebrow raised, she added, "The children mentioned their mother." Russ nodded, finally taking a bite of his stew. "Consumption. 2 years ago this June." Adelaide felt a pang of shared grief. "My Henry as well." Consumption is a cruel disease. They ate in silence for a moment, the sound of rain against the roof filling the space between them. "The children seem well adjusted," Adelaide ventured. "You've done a fine job with them." "They're good kids," Russ agreed, "but they miss having a mother. Especially Sarah. She was only 3 when Mary passed." Adelaide's heart ached for the little girl. "That's terribly young to lose a mother." "It is," Russ said, his voice gruff. "Thomas has stepped up, helps with her more than a boy his age should have to. But there are things a father can't provide." "I understand," Adelaide said, though in truth, she and Henry had never been blessed with children of their own. When they finished eating, Russ showed Adelaide to a small bedroom. This was Mary's sewing room, not much, but the bed's clean. "It's more than sufficient. Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Callahan." Russ paused at the door. "Storm might last through tomorrow. If it does, you're welcome to stay until it passes." "I wouldn't want to impose. It's no imposition," he interrupted. "Roads to Kalisoga will be mud pits anyway. No sense risking your neck." With that, he bid her good night and closed the door, leaving Adelaide alone with her thoughts in the small, neat room. As she lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the rain against the window, she couldn't help but reflect on the unexpected turn her journey had taken. The Callahan family's quiet grief resonated with her own, and despite her exhaustion, sleep was slow to come. Morning arrived with tentative sunlight filtering through the window. Adelaide rose, dressed in Mary Callahan's clothes, and ventured into the main room to find Thomas setting the table while Russ fried bacon at the stove. Sarah sat on a stool nearby, solemnly watching her father cook. "Good morning," Adelaide greeted them. "May I help with breakfast?" Sarah's eyes widened at the sight of Adelaide, apparently having slept through the excitement of the previous night. "Who are you?" the little girl asked bluntly. "This is Mrs. Stone," Thomas explained to his sister. "She's going to be the new teacher in Kalisoga. She stayed with us because of the storm." Sarah eyed Adelaide with naked curiosity. "You're pretty," she declared. "Do you know how to braid hair? Pa does it all wrong." "Sarah," Russ admonished, though Adelaide caught the hint of a smile on his lips. "Mrs. Stone is our guest, not your lady's maid." "I'd be happy to help with your hair after breakfast," Adelaide told Sarah, earning a beaming smile from the child. Breakfast was a simple but satisfying affair of bacon, biscuits, and coffee. Adelaide observed the family's interactions, noting the well-established routine and the obvious bond between father and children. Yet there was something missing: a warmth, a softness that she suspected had departed with Mary Callahan. After the meal, true to her word, Adelaide sat Sarah on a stool and carefully brushed and braided her hair. The little girl chattered happily, telling Adelaide about her doll, Elizabeth, and how she helped gather eggs from the chickens every morning. "You do that very nicely," Russ commented, watching Adelaide's deft fingers work through his daughter's hair. "Sarah hasn't stopped fidgeting for a hairbrushing since her mother passed." Adelaide smiled. "My mother had 5 daughters, I learned early." "5 daughters?" Thomas asked, clearly trying to imagine such a household. "Yes, and I'm the eldest," Adelaide explained. "I practically raised my youngest sisters after our mother fell ill." Russ nodded thoughtfully, and Adelaide wondered if he was considering how different his children's lives might have been with a woman's presence. After Sarah's hair was neatly braided, Russ announced he needed to check the cattle after the storm. Thomas was assigned to show Adelaide around the property while Sarah helped with simple chores. As they stepped outside, Adelaide was struck by the beauty of the Callahan ranch. Rolling hills stretched in all directions, with a creek running along the eastern boundary. Cattle grazed in the distance, and closer to the house, a small garden plot showed signs of recent planting. "Pa's been trying to grow vegetables," Thomas explained, following her gaze. "But he doesn't really know what he's doing." "Ma was the one with the green thumb," Adelaide nodded sympathetically. "Perhaps I could offer some advice. I kept a garden in Boston." Thomas brightened. "Would you?" "Pa won't admit it, but I think he feels bad that we don't have fresh vegetables like we used to." As they continued their tour, Thomas pointed out the barn, the chicken coop, and the corral where Russ broke horses. The boy was clearly proud of his father's ranch and knew every inch of the property. "How long has your family been here?" Adelaide asked as they paused by a fence to watch Penny grazing contentedly in the corral. "Pa came out here right after the war, the one between the states," Thomas explained. "He built this place from nothing, that's what he always says." "Ma came a few years later. They got married in Kalisoga." "Your father must be very hardworking," Adelaide observed. Thomas nodded. "The hardest working man in Wyoming territory, that's what everyone says. Even works Sundays, though Ma never liked that." As they made their way back to the house, Adelaide spotted Russ riding toward them, his figure strong and capable on horseback. Something about the sight made her breath catch slightly, a reaction that both surprised and troubled her. The next 2 days passed in similar fashion, with the roads to Kalisoga remaining impassable due to mud. Adelaide found herself slipping into the rhythms of the Callahan household with unexpected ease. She helped with meals, suggested improvements for the vegetable garden, and spent time teaching Sarah simple sums and letters, much to the child's delight. On the evening of the 3rd day, Adelaide sat on the porch, enjoying the sunset while Russ repaired a harness beside her. The children were inside, Thomas reading to Sarah before bedtime. "You're good with them," Russ said abruptly, breaking the comfortable silence. Adelaide smiled. "They're wonderful children, you should be proud." "I am." He paused his work, looking out at the darkening landscape. "They've taken to you, especially Sarah." She hasn't stopped talking about Mrs. Stone this and Mrs. Stone that since you arrived. Children adapt quickly to new people, Adelaide said, though she was touched by the girl's affection. Russ set aside the harness, turning to face Adelaide fully. The roads should be passable tomorrow. I can take you into Kalisoga in the wagon. Adelaide nodded, ignoring the unexpected pang of disappointment. Of course, I've imposed on your hospitality long enough. It hasn't been an imposition, Russ said quietly. It's been nice having another adult around, having someone who knows how to do the things Mary did. Adelaide felt a flush rise to her cheeks at the simple honesty in his words. I've enjoyed my time here as well. Your children are a delight, and it's been healing to be useful again. Russ studied her face for a long moment. The teaching position in town, is it arranged for you to board somewhere? The school board mentioned a room above the mercantile, Adelaide replied. Until more permanent arrangements can be made. Russ nodded slowly, as if considering something. The school's only 3 miles from here, not an impossible ride each day. Adelaide's heart quickened at his implication. Mr. Callahan, are you suggesting just something to consider? He said, rising abruptly. It's getting cold, we should head inside. That night, Adelaide lay awake, pondering Russ's words. The idea of remaining at the ranch, of continuing to be part of the children's lives, held a powerful appeal. Yet she barely knew this family and they her. Such an arrangement would be highly unusual, potentially scandalous. Still, as she finally drifted to sleep, she couldn't deny the sense of rightness she'd felt these past days, as if some divine hand had guided her through that storm to this particular doorstep. Morning brought a flurry of activity as Russ prepared the wagon for the journey to Kalisoga. Adelaide changed back into her own clothes, now clean and dry, though she found herself reluctant to remove Mary Callahan's simple dress. Sarah was inconsolable when told Adelaide would be leaving. "But why can't you stay?" she demanded, tears streaking her cheeks. "You make the best biscuits and you know how to braid hair right and—" "Sarah," Russ interjected gently. "Mrs. Stone has a job in town. She's going to teach children like you and Thomas." "But we need her more," Sarah insisted with a child's logic. Adelaide knelt before the little girl, her own eyes threatening tears. "I'll visit," she promised. "And perhaps you can come see me in town sometimes." This mollified Sarah somewhat, though she still clung to Adelaide's skirts until the last possible moment. The journey to Kalisoga was quiet, with Russ focused on navigating the still muddy roads and Adelaide lost in thoughts of the family she was leaving behind. As they entered the small but growing town, Adelaide took in the main street with its various businesses: a general store, a hotel, a saloon, and at the far end, the schoolhouse where she would begin teaching in a few days. Russ pulled the wagon to a stop before the mercantile. "This is Hardwick's," he explained. "Jim Hardwick runs it with his wife. Good people." Adelaide nodded, suddenly feeling as lost as she had the night of the storm. "Thank you for bringing me, Mr. Callahan, and for your family's hospitality." Russ helped her down from the wagon, his hand warm and strong around hers. "Russell," he said. "My name is Russell," Adelaide smiled. "Russell, then." Inside the mercantile, they were greeted warmly by Jim Hardwick, a portly man with a jovial demeanor. "You must be our new schoolteacher," he exclaimed. "We'd started to worry when you didn't arrive as scheduled. The storm delayed me," Adelaide explained. "Fortunately, Mr. Callahan and his family were kind enough to offer shelter." Hardwick nodded approvingly. "Lucky you found Russ's place, not much else out that way." He turned to Russ with a grin. "Though I'm surprised you let her leave, Callahan. A woman who can cook and teach seems like just what you need." Adelaide blushed at the blunt assessment, but Russ merely shrugged. "Mrs. Stone has her own plans." After helping Adelaide settle her few belongings in the small room above the store, Russ prepared to depart. Standing beside his wagon, he seemed uncharacteristically hesitant. "If you need anything," he finally said, "the ranch isn't far. Thomas rides into town for supplies every Saturday. He can bring word." "Thank you," Adelaide replied, Please tell the children I'll visit soon, as I promised. Russ nodded, then climbed into the wagon. As he drove away, Adelaide felt an inexplicable sense of loss, as if something precious had slipped through her fingers before she fully recognized its value. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as Adelaide prepared for the start of school. The schoolhouse was small but sound, with rows of desks and a modest library. Mr. Peterson, the head of the school board, informed her that she would have approximately 20 students of varying ages and abilities. Most are eager to learn, he assured her, though some of the older boys might test your authority. Don't hesitate to be firm. Adelaide nodded, confident in her ability to manage a classroom. She had taught in Boston before her marriage and found joy in education. On her third evening in Kalisoga, Adelaide was arranging books when she heard a knock at the schoolhouse door. Opening it, she was delighted to find Thomas Callahan, hat in hand, with Sarah beaming beside him. "Thomas, Sarah, what a wonderful surprise," Adelaide exclaimed, ushering them inside. "Pa said we could visit if we finished our chores early," Thomas explained. "We brought you something." He handed her a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside, Adelaide found a jar of honey and a loaf of fresh bread. "Pa made the bread," Sarah announced proudly. "He baked extra just for you." Touched by the gesture, Adelaide invited the children to sit while she prepared tea using the schoolhouse's small stove. As they shared the bread and honey, Thomas and Sarah eagerly helped Adelaide arrange books and prepare lessons for the coming week. "Will we be in your class?" Sarah asked hopefully. "Thomas certainly will," Adelaide confirmed. "You're still a bit young for formal schooling, but perhaps your father would allow you to attend occasionally." Sarah's face fell and Thomas explained, "Pa needs someone at home." "With Ma gone, Sarah helps with the chickens and such while I'm at school." Adelaide nodded understandingly, though the arrangement seemed a heavy responsibility for such a young child. "Perhaps we can find a solution that works for everyone," she suggested. When it was time for the children to leave, Thomas hesitated at the door. "Pa wanted to know if you might come for Sunday dinner," he said. "If you're not otherwise engaged." Adelaide's heart lightened at the invitation. "I would be delighted." Sunday arrived clear and mild, perfect for the 3-mile ride to the Callahan ranch. Adelaide had borrowed a gentle mare from Mr. Peterson, having explained her connection to the Callahan family. The school board member had seemed surprised but not disapproving of the friendship. As Adelaide approached the ranch, she was struck anew by its beauty in the full light of day. The house and outbuildings were simple but well-maintained, and wildflowers dotted the surrounding grassland. She spotted Russ near the barn, his shirt sleeves rolled up as he worked on some repair. He straightened when he heard her approach, shading his eyes against the sun. For a moment he simply looked at her, an expression Adelaide couldn't quite decipher crossing his features. "You came," he said finally, stepping forward to help her dismount. "I promised the children," Adelaide replied, aware of his hands at her waist as he lifted her down. "Only the children?" he asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Before she could formulate a response, Sarah burst from the house with a cry of delight, running full tilt toward Adelaide. Thomas followed at a more dignified pace, though his smile was equally welcoming. The day passed in pleasant domesticity. Adelaide helped prepare a dinner of roast chicken and vegetables from the garden she had helped plan. The meal was served outdoors on a table Russ set up beneath a large oak tree, and the conversation flowed easily among the four of them, as if Adelaide had always been part of their circle. After dinner, while the children played nearby, Russ and Adelaide sat in the shade, watching clouds drift across the Wyoming sky. "The school year starts tomorrow," Adelaide said, breaking a comfortable silence. Russ nodded. "Thomas is ready, he's a bright boy." "He is," Adelaide agreed. "He'll do well." She hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about Sarah. It seems a shame for her to miss out on early education." Russ sighed. "It can't be helped. I need her here, and there's no one to watch her during school hours." Adelaide took a deep breath. What if there was another solution? The room above the mercantile is comfortable enough, but it's lonely, and your home, while full of love, seems to be missing a woman's touch. She met his gaze directly. Perhaps there's an arrangement that would benefit us all. Russ studied her face, his expression serious. Are you proposing what I think you are, Mrs. Stone, Adelaide? She corrected gently. And yes, I suppose I am. Not marriage, not yet, we barely know each other. But I could live here, help with the children and the house while still teaching in town. You would have someone to care for Sarah while Thomas is at school, and I would have. She trailed off, uncertain how to express what she would gain. A family, Russ suggested quietly. Adelaide nodded, suddenly afraid she had overstepped. It's unconventional, I know. Russ chuckled, the sound warming Adelaide more than the afternoon sun. Everything about this is unconventional. A widow caught in a storm, finding her way to a widower's door. He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. But I can't deny that these past days have been the happiest this house has seen in 2 years. Then you'll consider it? Adelaide asked, hope rising within her. I'll do more than consider it, Russ replied. I'll welcome it, welcome you if you're certain, Adelaide smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. I am. The arrangement began the next day. Adelaide rode to school with Thomas in the morning, teaching until mid-afternoon, then returning to the ranch to help with evening chores and dinner. Sarah accompanied them several days a week, sitting quietly at the back of the classroom with paper and pencil, absorbing everything like a tiny sponge. The people of Kalisoga raised eyebrows at first, but Adelaide's dedication as a teacher and Russ's respected position as a rancher eventually silenced most gossip. Mr. Peterson, after an initial conversation to ensure propriety, gave his blessing, acknowledging that the unusual living situation seemed to benefit all involved, particularly the children. As summer approached and the school term neared its end, Adelaide found herself more integrated into the Callahan family than she could have imagined. She had her own room in the house, Mary's former sewing room made permanent, but spent most waking hours in shared spaces, building a life with Russ and the children. One evening in late May, after the children had gone to bed, Adelaide sat on the porch mending one of Thomas's shirts. Russ joined her, settling into the chair beside hers with a contented sigh. Thomas told me today that he's the only boy in school who doesn't get teased about something, Russ said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Adelaide looked up from her sewing. Oh, and why is that? Apparently, having a teacher who lives at your house grants you special status, Russ smiled. Though he did say Billy Johnson asked if you were his new mother and he wasn't sure how to answer, Adelaide's hands stilled. What did he say? He told Billy that you weren't his mother yet, but he was hoping you would be soon. Russ's eyes held hers in the fading light. Smart boy, my son. Adelaide's heart raced. Russ, it's been nearly 3 months, he said, reaching for her hand. 3 months of you in this house with these children, with me. He drew a deep breath. I know it's not been long since you lost your husband, and if you need more time, I understand. But I want you to know that I've come to care for you deeply, Adelaide, more than I thought possible after Mary. Adelaide set aside her sewing, turning fully toward him. I've come to care for you too, Russ, for all of you. These months have been a healing I didn't know I needed. Then perhaps, Russ said, his voice gentle but certain, it's time to make this arrangement more permanent. To give Thomas a proper answer for Billy Johnson. Adelaide felt tears spring to her eyes. Are you asking me to marry you, Russell Callahan? I am, he confirmed, taking both her hands in his. Not to replace Mary, but to start something new. To be a mother to my children and a wife to me, if that's what you want. It is, Adelaide whispered. More than anything. Their wedding took place on a perfect June day with wildflowers decorating the small church in Kalisoga. Thomas stood proudly beside his father, while Sarah served as an enthusiastic flower girl, scattering petals with abandon. The townspeople turned out in force, their initial skepticism transformed to genuine well-wishes for the schoolteacher and the rancher who had found each other in such unexpected circumstances. As Adelaide spoke her vows, she thought of Henry and the life they had shared in Boston. There was no betrayal in this new love. She knew only the continuation of life's journey, a healing that had come for all of them when they needed it most. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with tables set up beneath the oak tree where Adelaide had first proposed their unconventional arrangement. Food and laughter flowed freely, and even Mr. Peterson was seen tapping his foot to the fiddle music that accompanied the dancing. As the sun began to set, Russ found Adelaide watching Sarah twirl happily among the wildflowers, her hair coming loose from its careful arrangement. "Happy?" he asked, slipping an arm around her waist. "Completely," Adelaide assured him, leaning into his embrace. "Though I was just thinking about how different my life might have been if not for that storm." Russ chuckled. "Providence works in mysterious ways." "Indeed it does," Adelaide agreed. "I set out to find a new beginning and somehow found my way home instead." Later that night, after the guests had departed and the children were asleep, Russ and Adelaide stood together on the porch, looking out at the star-filled Wyoming sky. The future stretched before them, full of possibilities neither could have imagined just months before. "Mrs. Callahan," Russ murmured, drawing her close. "Welcome home." Adelaide smiled, her heart full. "I never thought I'd find shelter like this," she whispered. "A family to love, a purpose to fulfill." "And I never thought I'd find someone to love again," Russ replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Someone who could bring light back into this house, into our lives." As his lips met hers in a tender kiss, Adelaide knew with absolute certainty that this was where she belonged, not in a schoolroom in Boston or above a mercantile in Kalisoga, but here, in the arms of a man who had opened his home and heart to a widow riding alone. The years that followed brought changes to the Callahan ranch. Adelaide continued teaching at the Kalisoga school, though she eventually reduced her schedule to 3 days a week after the birth of their first child together, a son they named William. Sarah thrived under Adelaide's guidance, developing a love for books and learning that matched her brother's. Thomas grew into a thoughtful young man with his father's strength and his stepmother's compassion. The garden Adelaide had helped plan that first spring expanded each year, becoming one of the most productive in the county. The ranch prospered under Russ's careful management, allowing them to build an addition to the house and hire help during busy seasons. On the 5th anniversary of their wedding, Russ surprised Adelaide with a small piano for the main room, having it delivered all the way from Cheyenne. The music that filled their home in the evenings became as much a part of the ranch as the cattle and crops, a symbol of the culture and refinement Adelaide had brought to their frontier life. There were challenges, of course, harsh winters, dry summers, the normal conflicts that arise in any family. But the foundation they had built together proved strong enough to weather any storm, much like the shelter Russ had offered Adelaide on that fateful rainy night. 10 years after Adelaide first rode onto the Callahan ranch, she sat on the porch with Russ, watching their combined family, Thomas now 20, Sarah 15, William 8, and 4-year-old twins Emma and Elizabeth playing an elaborate game of their own invention in the yard. "I received a letter from my sister today," Adelaide told Russ. "She's considering coming west, says Boston holds too many sad memories since her husband's passing." Russ nodded thoughtfully. "There's always need for good people in Kalisoga. The town's grown considerably." "I told her she could stay with us while she decides what to do," Adelaide said. "I hope that's all right." "Of course," Russ agreed without hesitation. "This home has always had room for those who need shelter," he smiled at her. "It's something of a tradition." Adelaide leaned against his shoulder, contentment washing over her. "The best traditions often start by accident. Like a widow riding alone in a storm," Russ suggested, his voice warm with affection. "Exactly like that," Adelaide confirmed, thinking of how far they had come from that first night, two broken people who had found in each other the strength to build something new and beautiful. As the Wyoming sun set behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, Adelaide silently thanked the storm that had diverted her path all those years ago. What had seemed like misfortune had led her to the greatest blessing of her life, a man who had opened his door to a stranger, a family that had embraced her as their own, and a love that had healed wounds she'd thought would never mend. In the wild expanses of Wyoming territory, Adelaide Stone had found more than shelter from a storm. She had found her way home,